Hello everyone, apologies for disappearing for what it must have been now, a whole month by now, yeah I think so, maybe more. I'm sorry for my 24 subscribers, yeah, who must have missed me dearly. Things have been a little complicated as they tend to be, but this giant break actually has a very positive reason behind it. And that reason is that I upgraded my PC, and with that comes the whole period of time in which I must download every software I used to have, including the recording software and the editing one, as well as taking my time with understanding just how powerful it is, because I kind of changed everything. I changed a lot of things. I basically wiped the HD, I got an SSD, and a ton of other stuff. That's why so much stuff is missing. It wasn't like just downloading more RAM. But yeah, you get the idea. The good news is I've been well, and during this period of time I took the opportunity to enjoy a ton of games, because hey, you know I'm a lazy son of a bitch, right? What other reason would I have to stay away from my channel if it wasn't to play even more video games? But none of them took over my time more than the monster of a game that is Forza Horizon 4. Every time I thought I was done with it, it kept showing up on the back of my head, and before I knew it I had been racing for hours on pure instinct alone. Even as I played other games, I always reserved a little bit of time every day to run a few races because, well, spoilers for this review, the game really is just that damn good. So I think it rightfully deserves to be the first game I reviewed as soon as I managed to return to the channel. Well then, sit right back as I explain just why this might be one of the best racing games I ever played. Forza Horizon 4 opens up by throwing you straight into gameplay as soon as you start it, with that spectacular racing sequence in which you play as 4 different vehicles one at a time across different tracks in different seasons, thus demonstrating the game's main gimmick right out of the gate. That the game and its tracks all take place across one giant open road, but that said open road changes as the seasons pass. It's a great sequence that displays just the power of spectacle that Horizon 4 can display when at its best, and soon after you finish it, you get to choose between 3 different cars as your starter choices, kinda like Pokemon when I think about it, oh well, and throw into the game road. For you see, this is part of Forza Horizon 4's philosophy of openness that actually isn't quite on full display just after you're done with this first sequence. And at first you need to complete events on an almost but not quite linear order, as you are introduced to a handful of events at a time that serves as introductions to the game's main disciplines, the game's main series types as they call it. For you see, while Horizon has a lot of variety on its content, it is also laser guided on its focus towards cars or other 4-wheeled vehicles, so maybe there's a few vehicles that aren't 4-wheeled, I don't think so, but I'm not gonna check out. There's like a lot of vehicles here, there's just so many of them. But the point is, this is not the Crew 2. You will not race using boats or planes, or even motorcycles. There is a main focus on cars, and the different events in which you use those cars. So let's go over the series of events that are available one by one. There are road racing events, which are the more traditional kind of racing, in which you mostly stay on the classic asphalt roads. There are dirt racing events, in which you race on, well, guess what, dirt trails with occasional asphalt for a few seconds, but yeah, it's mostly kind of a rally trails experience. And then there's cross-country racing, which is basically one of my favorite types, in which you just end up racing across anything that is not a road, plowing through fields, rivers, and more, with a notable focus on the openness of the fields compared to the other categories. Beyond these, there are also illegal street races, which mostly resembles road racing, but sometimes dirt racing too, and might mix up a little bit of the two on the same track. It's not that clear. Well, there is also drag racing, in which you just drag race. You race on a straight line, kind of, basically. And last but not least, there are the showcases, big, highly scripted events in which you race against titans like giant rover boats and trains and other kinds of vehicles that are not cars, because sure, why not? At the start of the campaign, you only have access to a handful of events, but as you start completing them, you end up gaining some kind of experience point thing called Influence. Influence is used to unlock the current season's main showcase event, and after you unlock the showcase, earning even more influence brings you to the next season. Completing the actual showcase event is completely optional. Every time you complete an event, you also get influence towards a level bar that is related directly to the type of race you completed. So for example, completing a road racing event will award you with both global influence as well as influence for the road racing series of events. Level up a specific series and you unlock another handful of events of that series. However, completing all events before you go race on the next tier of unlocked events is completely optional. And since you are awarded influence even if you don't win them, it is likely you end up unlocking the next tier before you finish all currently available events. I estimate I only had to complete about half of the events of each series before reaching their individual ends. Which, in the end, this little part kind of serves as a microcosm. Did I use that word correctly? Is it like micro something? It serves as a small part that describes a small part that basically describes Forza Horizon 4's main design philosophy that permeates every aspect of the game. Well-structured, well-defined boundaries and progression systems with a distinct sense of freedom of proceeding however you want to. And honestly, playing however you want to and only needing to play through content you want to is one of the game's major strengths. You want to proceed through the campaign playing only the road racing series? You can do that. You want to mix and match different disciplines, or do you want to 100% complete them all? Sure, you can do it. Whenever you arrive at the starting point of a race, the main event there will most of the time completely change to match your car. So if you want to take a Ferrari to the rally courses, sure, you can do it. You think the event that the game generated for you is bad, for the car you currently is bad. Well, use the game's blueprint mode to simply make another one with other characteristics. Do you really want to change things up? You think all of that is not enough? Do you want to change things beyond the cars being used, the kind of event, the weather? Well, you can create custom courses yourself using the same blueprint system. The only limitation being the starting point must be the same starting point from one of the game's already established events. And it goes beyond that. Are you shit at video games? I know I sure am. That's why the game features a robust system that allows you to manually set not only difficulty, but just how many assists you want and what kind of assistance you need. The game has like a bazillion different cars, so you know there's something out there for you. But what if you need to go even deeper? Well, if you want to dig deeper artistically, then you can customize your paint up to including the option to import your own images and make the weeb car of your dreams. Or if you want to get hands on the machinery, you can do that as well with dozens of options to customize each individual car until it runs just like you want it to. Don't have the imagination or the patience? Just hop on in the community menu and download one of the many different mods that are already available there. Is it too late to mention that you can also download and play on the custom tracks that were made in blueprint mode? Because yeah, you can do that too. All of this is immediately identifiable when you open up the main menu, which is, well, you know, probably a better example of the freedom philosophy than the campaign structure, but shut up, I already wrote out that and I ain't rewriting it. But anyway, the menu explodes with a billion options and a trillion pretty colors and videos the moment you open it. And it was very overwhelming at first, but eventually navigating it was pretty easy, mostly thanks to the fact most of the options are on their most intuitive tabs. Most of them. But all of that is a great example of just how much fucking content this game has, and you can engage it with any moment that you can engage with at any moment. Like, holy shit, that's a lot of content, man. All of this eventually climaxes when you get enough influence to get officially inducted into the Horizon roster, and that's it. The game just keeps going, only instead of manually changing seasons now, every season directly corresponds to a real week's time in the real world, so every week you get new challenges to play in a different season. But there's no big climatic showdown, no final race, no end credits. You just keep playing it however you want to. It is both the logical conclusion of the game's philosophy, but also incredibly, extremely anticlimactic at the same time. I mean, yes, there are final gigantic race events that cross over the map when you reach the end of each individual racing series, but even those feel like just normal races but longer. They don't have any elements that make you feel like you really reached the last peak, the final challenge, the last race. They just kind of happen, and then the character of that respective series just shows up on radio and says, "Hey man, you're pretty cool," and that's it. That's what happens. And speaking of characters, let's talk about how the characters of this game are complete non-characters with barely any qualities you would expect of characters. You meet them personally after creating your own avatar character, which, yeah, it's cool, I guess. But you only do that once per character, and then they're gone from physical existence. And you only get to hear from them via voice calls whenever you level up, or sometimes something happens, I don't know. Sure, they each have very basic character traits that they use during those calls, but fuck me if I could ever remember who was who whenever they called me. I pretty much grew more attached to the radio DJs that I constantly listened to than the actual Horizon Festival organizers. Whenever the DJs didn't spout the exact same skit 3 times in a row, of course, because the writers forgot to record a few more. Well, at least they dropped sick beats from the vast library of licensed music the game has, which is also, by the way, the main reason you are probably listening to generic background music right now, because otherwise YouTube's policies would have just straight up fucked me over and not allow me to upload this video. Thanks YouTube, I hate you. All of this feels especially weird since the game does have a series of big climatic events full of personality, the showcases. But either because it entered in direct conflict with the game's design philosophy, or because they thought it wasn't real racing due to how heavily scripted the events are for maximum potential of slow-mo cool events, but either way, they are not obligatory. When I personally think they should at least have cool extra rewards so people feel like playing them, and that they should have had a final cool as heck showcase to cap off the game's main campaign. I mean, they are fucking perfect, and honestly, there should have been more of them. If they had more scripted events, then real racing fans might be mad, but on the other hand, we would have gotten the Uncharted of racing games. Instead, in the end, we just ended up with the kind of Breath of the Wild of racing games. Wait, you know what? That's not a bad quote at all, and you can quote me on that. Forza Horizon 4 is the Breath of the Wild of racing games. Yeah, put that on the back of the box. And while we're talking about Breath of the Wild, let's talk about Forza's open world. It is a big open world based on it is British, okay? And it is filled with long stretches of roads and even longer stretches of fields that you are more than encouraged to plow through in order to get anywhere you want, while those most of the time being events. And yet, between events, there are also a lot of different shorter activities you can partake in, mostly involving the wanton destruction of public property in order to destroy giant wood boards that either grant you a boost of global influence or a discount when you fast travel, because yes, the game actually asks you to spend in-game currency in order to fast travel. Not that you necessarily need to destroy the public property, it's just that sometimes the boards are hidden in such obscure corners inside some random guy's garage. It would be honestly surprising if you didn't rack up the place trying to get to them. How did the Horizon Festival get authorization to put them there? There's also speed traps that you run as fast as possible through in order to gather stars, which add even more global influence to your level. And the DLC also adds speed zones and drift zones, which are exactly what they sound like, specific parts of roads in which you must either go as fast as possible or drift as much as possible in. Plus, Trailblazers, where you must go to point A in order to start a timer, and then you must reach point B as fast as possible, but through whatever pad you think is best, rather than a more linear racing track. On top of all of that, there is a skill system that grants you skill points on both races and on the free roam open road as you perform little tricks, so long as your car doesn't crash into anything. Add all of this together and you get a nice flow of gameplay that means you likely never even use the fast travel to begin with. That happens because you've already met the requirements to engage and disengage with any of these side activities at any point, that requiring being, of course, being inside a car. You're always inside a car. You can't walk around at any point, and given that these little side excursions have no intro cutscenes or relocation of any sort of trigger mechanism other than just being there, plus the fact all of these are clearly marked on your map, including the wooden boards you drive nearby as well, this all adds up to make a satisfying road to traverse. I mean, you are already going to the street racing event on the northeast side of the map, might as well do a few of the side activities and train the whole trip together using skills between points of interest for some extra influence and maximum efficiency in progression. And then there's the fact the road is just that great to drive around by itself. It isn't as varied as you might wish for, since this isn't a Mario game, so there isn't a grass road, snow road, desert road, lava road kind of scheme going on. But it does try to be grounded around Great Britain after all. But it's still filled with all kinds of terrain and landscape, including urban ones, and of course it tries to have some degree of verticality. One of the most memorable moments of my journey was due to the open road. It happened after I finished the drag racing event on the beach and seeing an influence board on the other end of the beach, so I drove there motivated by curiosity and the points. Mostly the points, honestly. But when I crashed into the board, I noticed that the location where it was kind of the end point of a river that fell into the sea, passing through the beach, and I was curious about what the starting point of the river was, so I decided to drive into the fucking river and race against the damn current to see where it went, because yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is what peak arcade racing looks like. You might not like it, but driving up rivers is just straight up peak fun. And it ended up leading me to a place near the starting point of an event I previously drove on, and made me connect the pieces of the map or where the different parts of the landscape is, and realize that this cool river was hidden nearby a point I visited multiple times and I hadn't even noticed. That I wouldn't have noticed either if it wasn't for that perfect bonus board placement. I wonder if I could blueprint a river racing event there. That sounds kind of absolutely fucking awful in the best way possible. If there's a thing that kind of drags down the experience on a gameplay level and at completely random times, it is when the grind hits. It's the grind hit. Since you are always earning influence and always progressing and always earning credits, it's easy to feel like this is going to be a smooth ride from beginning to end, progression-wise. But it's not, because while a lot of the time what you want is just a few obstacles away, sometimes you randomly get hit with a giant wall right between you and whatever you really want. Like, for example, you can buy most of the cars in this game pretty easily with what you earn after a few races. There are affordable cars that are like approximately only 50,000 credits, I think. And then there are 100,000, 100,000. Yeah, sure, even 1 million for some really good shit, and then bam! 6 million credits for a single car. There's no scaling up, no smooth curve, just a straight up 5 million or more difference between whatever you want and whatever you have in the next tier of whatever you want. Not helping things is that you mostly makes a miserable amount of racing in terms of credits. The real quick get rich quick scheme is to get lucky on the Horizon spin wheels, because yes, there are spin wheels. Even in a racing game, how much fun you're going to have today is tied directly to a fucking gacha filled with trash avatar items you never fucking wanted. But fuck it, because if you ain't gonna play trash mobile games, then they're just gonna have to ruin the AAA ones too. And money isn't the only thing you need to grind either, as when you reach level 10 of road racing, you might think you're done unlocking events, but no. There is actually a level 20 ultimate challenge with absolutely nothing in terms of events in between that. Just hours of grinding influence. Like, honestly, holy shit, what were the developers thinking? You can even grind on other events or other kinds of events, since you need road racing specific influence to level it up. But that short trip through Negativity Valley aside, Forza Horizon 4's main gameplay just feels really damn good and satisfying to play. There is a car of every style for every type of racing gamer, from grip style cars that go super fast and are hard to turn, but in turn they are easier to keep going fast straight, to butter knives of cars that drift at the slightest provocation but are great for those corner field tracks. My personal favorite car being the Maserati MC12 Forza Edition. And yes, I know that is kind of a generic, boring choice since a lot of people is all like, oh yeah, that's a pretty great car, but hey, it is great for a reason. And some people like the McLaren Senna, and it's even on the box art if I'm not wrong, but really, honestly, I don't feel like I have quite as much control of its handling like I do with the MC12, and running the same race with both of them with a few different setups before I ended up running those races, using different mods I downloaded because I'm not smart enough to make my own. And eventually I realized I could easily do corners and with the MC12 that I couldn't do with the Senna. And that really nailed down how deep and varied the customization systems are. And even before that, the car selection really is very varied, and at the very basic level of gameplay, just how fun it is to ride around in Forza Horizon 4. So you know, in conclusion, ha 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 ha, you thought you would actually get a smooth segue into an ending for once? Too bad, because I bought the deluxe edition of the game, which means you must now hear me rant about the DLC in awkwardly forced sentences that didn't actually fit anywhere else on the script. Or you know, you could just close the window or the tab or go to another video, I guess, but I know you don't have the mental fortitude to do that, or else you'd have jumped away from this dumpster fire towards Dioxide's channel a long time ago. So, let us begin with the first DLC to be released, Fortune Island. Fortune Island begins with another cool scripted opening sequence, just like the beginning sequence of the main game, showcasing the role nature will play into this expansion by having you arrive on the titular Fortune Island during the middle of a heavy storm, having to dodge falling trees as lightning bolts hit them on very uneven terrain, and just like the main game, that sequence is promptly forgotten after it's done, with the rest of the DLC never capitalizing on its potential for scripted events. Not that the DLC is bad at all though, it is in fact quite great, coming with a brand new cars and a brand new island to explore that capitalize a lot on verticality and rough terrain. The island you see is a very mountainous location, filled with the very cool drift cliffs and sharp sudden drops, but it's not so mountainous to the point of not being absolutely filled with potential racetracks. My most memorable moment of this DLC is of a particular stretch of road that is so narrow it barely exists, and accelerating at 300 plus kilometers per hour without dropping out of existence is a massive challenge, let alone trying to overtake anyone there. Racing there was exhilarating and literally, not figuratively, literally got my heart pounding like crazy the first time I went through there. It is definitely one of my favorite racing tracks ever made, or racing track stretch, since it appears on more than one event. But well, other than the good tracks and the expert use of rough terrain to bring more variety of different kinds of tracks that weren't available in the main game, another reason to buy this DLC are the treasures of Treasure Island. They are basically treasure chests that only appear on the map after you solve specific racing riddles, each one containing 1,000,000 credits, something which is sure to help on the credit grind, though honestly at this point you probably already have a rocket load of credits from one of the many different kinds of exploits and grinding strategies out there. Having more sure don't hurt though. The second expansion pack, LEGO Speed Champions, is sure to be quite a bit more divisive. It does allow you to drive LEGO cars in a game that is otherwise completely realistic after all. But me on the other hand, I'm firmly on the LEGOs are awesome, bring it camp, which is why this DLC is actually incredibly disappointing. It takes place on Lego Valley, but instead of it being a landscape completely made out of Lego, it's just a place that is approximately 60% Lego if we are being really generous. I think the idea might have been that Lego Valley is actually a real normal place that they just decided to build a giant Lego festival on top of, but it doesn't really work as well in practice as it does on paper. In practice, you end up with forests made half of Lego trees that you rush through only to find out that it's suddenly at the halfway point it turns into a simple forest of realistic trees. You also get random buildings showing realistic terrain with no sense of aesthetic purpose, though it does at least come with a desert region, since at this point might as well, which is something that was lacking in the more Great Britain main game, plus a traditional speedway and a truly crazy stunt park, which helps even up the initial unevenness of what you might have come to expect of the location. What is less forgivable though is the absolutely pitiable amount of Lego cars available. 4 cars. Only 4 cars. You can't customize them with Lego blocks either. In fact, there is 0 Lego building on this Lego DLC, not even as an Easter egg, which is very disappointing. There is no making, no sense of Lego creativity of placing blocks. And then there's the very even stranger decision to completely drop the design philosophy of the rest of the game in favor of a more rigid achievement-based progression system, in which you must collect Lego blocks by completing different challenges, but unlike the main game or Fortune Island, you must constantly complete new challenges to unlock more blocks, removing the previously available option of just repeating courses you like and trying to get better at them until more personally enjoyable courses are available. In fact, the number of course-related challenges are rather small compared to the entirety of challenges available, which means it's rather likely you'll run out of new events and be forced to do the more annoying challenges long before whatever point you decide to drop the DLC's campaign. That's not even going into the challenges that require specific cars that you might or might not have in order to accomplish, which means you might end up raking up a tab on the auto shop buying new cars just in order to do all of the challenges, even if you have no intentions of using the cars anywhere else afterwards, ever again. It's just a system that completely removes your freedom, and not only completely removes your freedom, it is also a much more annoying system because it inserts a lot of annoying design philosophies that I just keep wondering what were the developers thinking when they did that, because they are not present at any level anywhere else in the game. All of this combines to make for a rather lukewarm DLC, which actually makes me kind of glad I jumped into it first like the anxious dumbass I am because I love Lego, instead of going in order, because this means Fortune Island was the last of the content I played, and hoo boy. Yeah, I personally think that one is far superior to Speed Champions. As for the Lego DLC cars, yeah, there are a few of them, but at least they look really cool, and I love racing them, because you can race them even outside the DLC specific place, which is great. You can just go Legoing around, but I really wish there were much more than 4, like at least 10 cars. Yeah, it might be a bit of an exaggeration, but yeah, it's kind of an expensive DLC. I personally think I should have 10 Lego cars. I just like Lego, okay? It doesn't matter the price. I want more Lego cars. As for the other DLC cars that come with the special edition of the game, as well as the VIP Pass, well, the VIP Pass helps a bit of grinding, but it's not strictly necessary. And as for the DLC cars, it's honestly up to personal preference. There are many of them. But the Maserati is like not even DLC, which is my favorite car, the MC12. So no, yeah. And on that note, it's finally time for our awkward and sudden finale. Bye!